I don't remember my real parents. Sometimes in my dreams I imagine them, soft silhouettes reaching out to me through the mist, their hands warm and kind. But when I wake up, there's only the ceiling of St. Mary's Orphanage, pale blue, cracked at the corners, and the faint hum of the city far outside the window. I was 6 when I realized I was different. Other children had visitors, smiling couples who brought gifts and whispered promises. I used to watch from the corner as they picked the ones they thought looked most lovable, the ones who smiled easily, or had dimples, or knew how to say thank you sweetly. I wasn't one of them. I was quiet, small, and shy. My eyes were too big for my face, and I didn't talk much. But one rainy afternoon, everything changed. The director called me into her office. Her desk was cluttered with papers, the smell of instant coffee in the air. "Lena," she said, "this is Mr. and Mrs. Harris. They'd like to meet you." A tall man in a gray coat and a woman with red lipstick sat across the room. The man's smile was too practiced. The woman's eyes scanned me like I was a piece of furniture she wasn't sure she wanted. "Hello," I whispered. The woman, Mrs. Harris, crouched slightly, though her knees didn't seem used to it. "How old are you, darling?" 10. 10, she repeated, glancing at her husband. "That's a good age. Not too young." I didn't understand what she meant. Mr. Harris gave me a polite smile. "Do you like the city, Lena?" I shrugged. "I've never really seen it." They exchanged a look. Something unreadable passed between them. A week later, I was told to pack my things. Just a small suitcase, 2 dresses, a stuffed rabbit, a notebook, and my favorite yellow sweater. Everyone at the orphanage smiled and said I was lucky. A family at last. Sister Margaret said, hugging me, "You'll have a real home." I wanted to believe her. Their apartment was on the 22nd floor of a tall glass building downtown. Everything sparkled, marble floors, glass walls, white couches that looked too clean to sit on. "This is home now," Mrs. Harris said, her heels clicking as she walked around. "Don't touch the walls with your hands, they leave marks." I nodded. "You'll sleep in the small room next to the laundry," she added, as if she were reading a grocery list. The room was barely large enough for a bed and a dresser. But I didn't complain. I was used to sharing a dormitory with 6 other girls. At dinner, I tried to speak. "Thank you for taking me," I said quietly. Mr. Harris didn't look up from his phone. Mrs. Harris was scrolling through her tablet. "Eat," she said simply. "Don't talk while chewing." Their food was fancy, things I didn't even know the names of. I missed the simple meals at the orphanage, rice and soup and sometimes a banana. That first night, I cried quietly under my blanket. Not because I was sad, but because I felt invisible. It didn't take long for me to learn the rules of the Harris household. No speaking unless spoken to. No touching things without permission. No going outside alone. No crying. Mrs. Harris said crying made my face ugly. Days blurred into each other. I did chores, cleaning, dusting, folding laundry. They said it was to teach me discipline. Mr. Harris was always away, working late. Mrs. Harris spent hours doing yoga or talking on the phone with friends, her laughter echoing across the apartment. When guests came, she made me wear pretty dresses and stand beside her, smiling. "This is our adopted daughter," she would say sweetly. "We're doing charity work, giving her a better life." They would nod and tell her how kind she was. Sometimes they'd pat my head, as if I were a pet. I learned how to fake smiles. It started small. One morning, I spilled orange juice on the white carpet. Mrs. Harris's face turned red. "You stupid child," she screamed. The glass shattered against the floor, juice splattering everywhere. "Do you know how expensive this is?" I tried to clean it, my hand shaking, but she slapped me. Hard. "Next time," she hissed, "think before you move." I didn't cry. I just whispered, "I'm sorry," over and over. Later that night, Mr. Harris saw the mark on my cheek. He said nothing. Days later, when I accidentally broke a vase while dusting, it happened again, this time worse. She grabbed my arm and shook me so hard my shoulder ached for days. "Ungrateful little thing," she muttered. "We take you in, and this is how you repay us." That was when I began to understand. I wasn't their daughter. I was their burden. Sometimes when they were both out, I'd stand by the window and watch the city below. Cars like glowing ants, people rushing everywhere, the world alive and full of sound. I'd imagine being out there, walking freely, buying my own food, making friends. One afternoon, I sneaked onto the balcony. The wind whipped my hair. The city smelled of rain and freedom. That's when a voice startled me. "What are you doing out here?" Mr. Harris stood by the sliding door. For a second, I thought he might be angry, but he looked tired. "I just wanted to see," I said. He sighed. "You shouldn't make her angry, Lena. You know how she gets." "She doesn't like me," I said softly. He looked at me, his eyes heavy. "You'll just have to behave better." He left without another word. That night, I realized that even the quiet ones can be cruel, not by what they do, but by what they refuse to stop. When I turned 12, they enrolled me in a private school. Not out of kindness, Mrs. Harris said it would make them look good in front of their friends. I loved school. For a few hours each day, I was away from the apartment. I met Mia, a girl with curly hair and a kind smile. She asked once why I never brought lunch or wore new clothes. I lied and said I didn't like eating much. One afternoon, she invited me to her birthday party. I begged Mrs. Harris to let me go. She laughed. "You think you deserve parties? You have chores." So I stayed home, scrubbing floors while she sipped wine on the balcony. When I returned to school, Mia gave me a small cupcake wrapped in napkin. "We missed you," she said. It was the sweetest thing I'd ever tasted. That winter was cold. The heater in my room broke, and Mrs. Harris refused to fix it. "You'll survive," she said. I started sleeping in my yellow sweater, hugging my stuffed rabbit tight. One night, I woke up to shouting. Mr. and Mrs. Harris were fighting in the living room. "I'm tired of this, Claire," he shouted. "She's a child, not your servant. She's ungrateful. She ruins everything," she yelled back. I heard something crash. My heart pounded. Then silence. The next morning, Mrs. Harris's eyes were swollen, but she smiled at me coldly. "Your fault," she whispered. "You make us fight." From then on, she stopped talking to me altogether, except to order or punish. When I turned 15, I began to dream of running away. I had no money, no place to go, but I thought maybe the streets would be kinder than that apartment. One night, after they went to bed, I packed my little bag. A sweater, some clothes, and my rabbit. I crept to the door, my heart racing, but before I could open it, a voice came from behind. "Where do you think you're going?" Mrs. Harris stood there, her face pale with rage. "You want to leave? After everything we've done for you?" I froze. She grabbed my arm and slapped me, once, twice, 3 times. My lip bled. "Try that again," she hissed, "and you'll regret it." I nodded, trembling. She locked my room that night. The next morning, she was all smiles at breakfast, humming as if nothing had happened. Mr. Harris avoided my eyes. It was raining the night everything burned. Mrs. Harris had gone to a gala. Mr. Harris was drinking alone. I was doing laundry when I smelled smoke. I ran to the kitchen. A towel had fallen onto the stove. Flames climbed the wall. I shouted for help. Mr. Harris stumbled in, panicked, tried to douse it with water, but the fire spread fast. "Get out," he shouted. I ran toward the front door, but smoke filled the hallway. The heat was unbearable. He tried to follow but tripped, coughing violently. I grabbed his arm, but he pushed me away. Go. I stumbled through the smoke, found the exit, and ran down the stairs barefoot. By the time the fire trucks arrived, the apartment was engulfed. Mrs. Harris came running from a taxi, screaming. They pulled Mr. Harris out, barely alive. I stood there in the rain, trembling, watching everything burn. When the fireman asked who I was, Mrs. Harris turned to him and said coldly, "She's just the orphan." The next few weeks were chaos. Mr. Harris was hospitalized with burns. Mrs. Harris blamed me for everything. She told the authorities I had caused the fire. They took me into questioning. I tried to explain, but she had money and lawyers. I had no one. They sent me back to St. Mary's temporarily while the case was reviewed. Sister Margaret hugged me tightly. "You poor child," she whispered. "You've been through so much." But even there, I felt like a ghost. The other children looked at me differently, whispers that I'd burned a house down. I stopped talking altogether. Months later, I was told Mrs. Harris wanted to see me. Against Sister Margaret's advice, I agreed. We met at a cafe downtown. She wore black sunglasses and perfect makeup. "You ruined my life," she said quietly. "Do you know that?" I stared at the table. "My husband divorced me. Everyone thinks I'm cruel because of you. But don't worry, I'll make sure you never bother us again." She slid an envelope across the table. "This is all the charity money I owe the orphanage. Take it back to them. It's the last thing you'll ever get from me." Then she stood and walked away. I sat there for a long time, staring at the cold coffee in front of me. When I turned 18, I left the orphanage for good. They gave me a small stipend and wished me luck. I found work cleaning offices at night, staying in a tiny rented room that smelled of mold. Every night, I passed by tall glass buildings, reflections of a world that had never wanted me. I saw families laughing in restaurants, couples walking hand in hand, children tugging their parents' sleeves. I wondered if anyone would ever love me without wanting to change me. One evening, after a long shift, I climbed to the rooftop of the building where I worked. The city lights stretched endlessly, beautiful and cruel. I thought about my life, the orphanage, the Harris apartment, the fire, the endless loneliness. I whispered, I tried to be good. The wind carried my words away. Somewhere below, sirens wailed faintly, maybe for someone else, maybe for me. I closed my eyes and imagined my parents' faces again, soft, kind, reaching out. And for the first time, I felt warm. They found my notebook the next morning, on the edge of the roof. The last page read, "I was not born to be loved by them. But maybe, somewhere beyond this city, there's a place where love doesn't hurt." Sister Margaret kept the notebook in her drawer for years, showing it to new children who came to the orphanage. Her name was Lena, she would say softly. She wanted to be loved. Remember her, and be kind to each other. And though the world moved on, sometimes when the night was quiet, a gust of wind would sweep through the orphanage halls, gentle, warm, like a whisper of forgiveness.